Anamutamam yajgatva munayaha sarve param sedemito gataha.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection."
Idam jnanamupashritya mama sadharmayam agataha sargepinopajayante pralayena vatanti cha.
By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus establish, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution.
Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbham nidamyaham sambhavaha sarvabhutanam tato bhavati bharataha.
The total material substance, called Brahman, is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata.
Sarvayonishu konteya murtayaha sambhavantiyaha tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradaha pita.
It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father.
Sattvam rajastama eti gunaha prakriti sambhavaha nibadnati mahabaho dehinam avya.
Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes.
Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakasham anamayam sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena chanagaha.
O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge.
Rajoragatmakam vedi Krishna sanga samudbhavam tanne badnati konteya karma sangena dehinam.
The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. O son of Kunti, and because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions.
Tamasva ajnanajam vedi mohanam sarvadehinam pramadalasya nidrabis tanne badnati parat.
O son of Bharata, note that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul.
Sattvam sukhe sanjayati rajaha karmani bharata jnanam avritya dutamaha pramade sanjayati yuta.
O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, passion conditions one to fruitive action, and ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to the madness.
Rajasamascha vibhuya sattvam bhavati bharata rajaha sattvam tamaschaiva tamaha sattvam rajastata.
Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance. O son of Bharata, sometimes the modes of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at the other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy.
Sarvadarveshu dehesmin prakasha upajayate jnanam yada tada vidyad vivridam sattvamiti yuta.
The manifestations of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge.
Pravritirarambaha karma nama shamaha sphira rajasi etani jayante vivride bharatarshaba.
O chief of the Bharatas, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop.
Aprakasho pravritischa pramado moha evacha tamasi etani jayante vivride kurunandana.
When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, O son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifested.
Yada sattva pravridetu pralayam yati dehabrit tatodatma vidam lokan amalan pratipadyate.
When one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets of the great sages.
Rajasi pralayam gatva karma sangi shujayate tata pralinastamasi mudayo nishujayate.
When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities, and when one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom.
Karmanaha sukritasya huhu sattvikam nirmalam phalam rajasastu phalam dukam agyanam tamasaha phalam.
The result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness, but action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness.
Sattvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha pramada moho tamaso bhavato jnanam eva.
From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, greed develops. And from the mode of ignorance, develop foolishness, madness, and illusion.
Urdhvam gachanti sattvasta madhyetishtanti rajasaha Jaganya guna vritista ado gachanti tamasaha.
Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds.
Nanyam gunebhyaha kartaram yada drashtanupashyati gunebhyascha param veti madbhavam sodegachati.
When one properly sees that all activity, when one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord, who is the transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature.
Gnan etan atitya trin dehi deha samudbhavan janma mrityu jara duker vimikto mrittamashnute.
When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life.
Arjuna vacha kirlingeshrin gunan etan atito bhavati prabho kimachara katam chaitam strin gunan ati vartate.
Arjuna inquired, O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior and how does he transcend the modes of nature?
Shri Bhagavan vacha prakasham cha pravritim cha moham eva cha pandava nadveshti sampravrittani navirtani kangshati. Udasina vadasino guneryo navichalyate gunavartanta etievam yovatishta te nengate. Samadukaha sukaha svastaha samaloštashma kanchanaha tulya priya priyo dhiras tulya nindatma samsrutihi manapamana Manapamanayostuliyas tulyomitraripakashayaho sarvaramba parityagi gunatita sa uchate.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Bandu, he who does not hate, illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the mode alones are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature.
Mamcha yovya bicharena bhakti yogena sevate swagunan samatityetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate.
One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman.
Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukasya kantikasya cha.
And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Wonderful, Yash, as usual. Very, very fluent, expertly recited Sanskrit. Yash, if you don't mind, just give you one small piece of how the recitation. Your recitation is very, very good. But whenever you have the AH sound, in between, let me just see if I can find a verse that is good. I can give an example. Yeah, so for example, if you got number 4, yeah? If you like Sarva Yonishu Konteya Murteya Sambhavantiya. So when you are saying Murteyaha, so that double sound in when there's AH at the end of the line, then you give it a double sound. So this would be Murteya Sambhavanti Yaha. But that first Murteya, that should be just as Yah, not Yaha.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just
Thank you,
very,
Prabhuji.
very small adjustment, but that will make your meter sound much better, right? That's what they do when the expert are doing it. They will not sound a double H in the middle of the line, only at the end of the lines. Yeah, something that you can get in mind to just improve. But otherwise, it was really, really nice. And
Thank you.
Mataji, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Despite the fact that the writing was so small, you were very fluent. You didn't miss a single word. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone.
Hare Krishna. So let me just stop sharing this and then go on to our presentation. Okay. Right, so we're continuing Bhagavad Gita, reciting the chapter 14, verse number 20 today. So you were not expecting me today. Today, usually Friday, it is Deepanam Prabhu, but he rang me this afternoon. He had some other things that he was caught up with, and he said he wouldn't have time to get ready for this class. So then I took over. So let's see how we do with this. Let's do the chapter summary as usual. Chapter 14, the 3 modes of material nature. Summary. text 1 to 4, the liberation and conditioning of the living entities. So Krishna explains how the living entities come to get affected by the modes. Then the modes bind the pure soul. So this is continuation of that. Then 10 to 13, recognizing the mode supremacy that we spoke in those verses about the race of supremacy and how as devotees, once we have this knowledge, we can recognize what's going on with the modes in our own lives and others' lives. 14 to 18, acting and dying within the modes. Important information there about what happens in those different modes. Then 19 to 27, this last session, Krishna now, having told us all the information about the modes, now he is now telling us that we actually need to transcend the modes. Even remaining in the mode of goodness is not good enough. This is what we've discussed before. So let's see what verse 20 is saying. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Gunane Pranatitya Trin Dehi Deha Samudbhavan Janma Mrityu Jara Dukhe Vimukto Mittam Ashnate. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So the verse, Dehi. Dehi refers to the soul. There's two words, Dehi and Deha. Deha refers to the body, but Dehi is the living entity, the soul. Janma Mrityu, we normally say Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi. So in this line is saying Janma Mrityu Jara Dukher. So the distresses, same meaning, birth, death, old age, and disease, or old age and distress. Then the last line says Vimukto Mritam Ashnute. So Vimukto refers to being freed, mukti. Vimukto. Mrityam, there's an apostrophe there. You can see as usual. So it's Amritam, not Mritam, Amritam. Amrita refers to nectar. And Amrita also, because Mrityu is death, and Amrita is immortality. So it could mean both things. So Vimukta, Amrita, Ashnute. So here it means nectar, because Ashnute means enjoy. So that person enjoys nectar, and Prabhupada says in the translation, even in this life. Just get my shawl. This room is a little bit cold today. So we'll read the purport. Let's see who I can see on this line. Okay, I asked this name before, but I forgot already. KKHHRRHH. What is your name?
Hitesh.
Hitesh Prabhu. Yes, Hitesh Prabhu, could you please read the purport?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Give me one moment, please.
Sure.
How one can stay in transcendental position, even in this body, in full Krishna consciousness, is explained in this verse. The Sanskrit word dehi means embodied. Although one is within the material body, by his advancement in spiritual knowledge, he can be free from the influence of the modes of nature. He can enjoy the happiness of spiritual life even in this body, because after leaving this body, he is certainly going to the spiritual sky. But even in this body, he can enjoy spiritual happiness. In other words, devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the sign of liberation from material entanglement. And this will be explained in the 18th chapter. When one is freed from the influence of the modes of material nature, he enters into devotional service.
Thank you, Hitesh Prabhu. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadadati Swapadantikam Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swaminiti Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So quite a nice verse because it gives us a lot of hope that we don't have to actually wait till we leave this body. We can enjoy transcendental bliss even in this body. This is the main thrust of this particular verse. So we look at the main points. Prabhupada saying, although one is within this material body, by the advancement of in spiritual knowledge, he can be free from the influence of the modes of nature. So the spiritual knowledge gives us the realized understanding. And once we have the realizations, then we start to make the progress in spiritual life. And how does everything begin? So first of all, the basic understanding Krishna gives first, in Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, very first instruction to Arjun, Dehi nosmin yatha dehe, you are not this body. So that knowledge we all have. I think most, of course, the Western philosophies, Christians, don't believe in all that. They just believe that the body and the soul, everything is one and everything finishes. They don't believe in reincarnation and all that. But we believe that I am not this body. So the body and the soul are separate. This body is something that has been given to us by material nature under the Lord's arrangement. And that body we will have for a number of years, and we will quit it, and we will go and take on another body depending on our karma. So this understanding we have, but theoretically we all know it. But by getting deeper and deeper into Bhagavad Gita, we get into a realization of this. And the realization, the difference between this theory, yes, we all know textbook knowledge that yes, I'm not this body. But then when we actually realize that, then we will start to live with that notion, which means that we will be less and less attached to our body. And as a result of that, as an extension of that, when you're less attached to your body, you will be less attached to everything else in relation to this body, meaning your possessions, your relations, and the material world in general. So this is what we get by spiritual advancement. Then also again, Lord Krishna is a supreme. We may all know this. Krishna says it so many times in Bhagavad Gita. But again, it may remain just as a book knowledge. But once the realization is there, we will start to develop pure love for him in our heart. When we realize that he's a supreme, he is our only goal. Our only purpose in this life is to serve him. Not in just this life, but our purpose as a soul is to serve him, whether in this life or in the spiritual world. So once we have that realization again, we will start to lose our attachments to this material world and everything else. And then, yes, once you get to that situation, you realize that I need to take his shelter to become free. And by this time, you're already quite close. Once you points 1 and 2 here are realized, then you're very close to then taking the shelter, because everything else is now shedding away, right? So this is the general progress. And then, of course, that knowledge culminates in bhakti. bhakti, because we all actually right now, we say we are doing bhakti, but we are practicing stage. We are all practicing devotional service, as we will find study later on in this particular text. Bhakti, real bhakti, begins later when we are, at the moment we're in the practicing stage, but the perfection stage happens later. So as we advance in bhakti, so when all these things are happening and we are advancing in bhakti, the influence of the modes is decreasing bit by bit. So devotees, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not that I will wake up tomorrow morning and realize that, wow, I'm now realized and everything is changed. No, of course, it's a gradual process. Some say that it can take years or decades. Some say it can take lifetimes. But it is a process, a slow process. It can be fast in some cases, depending on how much covering we have. But this is the process, and thankfully all of us are on the journey. That's the main thing to remember. All of us are in the journey, and we will eventually make it. Once we stay on the train, we will make it. It's like, it reminds me about, many of you may have experience of the local trains in Mumbai. So if you're in the local train and you want to get out at a particular station, you just need to position yourself at the right place, and then the crowd will just take you out. You don't have to make any effort. You'll be out. But if you don't time it well, you don't get your positioning right, you might even get off a station too early. Well, station too late. So like that. So we stay on this boat of devotional service. Stay on this boat of ISKCON. Prabhupada has given us the perfect vehicle. It's a boat. Let's stay on with the devotees, and we will make it sooner or later, depending on our own attachments, our own coverings. So the influence decreases, our attachment decreases. And as our attachment decreases, we will be able to remain more equipoised. The example I can give you, just this morning, the neighbor came in just to say to us that a daughter, somebody in school had COVID, so she's been asked to isolate and all that, right? So I took that news and I said, yeah, of course, we'll pray that she's all right and everything. But later on, I was just thinking about it, that yes, okay, she's a neighbor, I know her, and the little girl, of course, I hope that she is safe and everything. But there was no deeper feeling. Yes, I will pray for her, and I just, of course, we as devotees, we want everybody to be okay. But if that situation was happening to my son, for example, if somebody said to me that my son was in touch with somebody and he has to isolate, I would be a lot more concerned, right? We all would be, because now it's very close, because I'm attached to my son. I'm not that attached to the neighbor's daughter. So that way, if you can see, so when if my attachment to my son was also gradually decreased, it would be the similar thing. I would then have a similar sort of reaction in my body, that not so much attachment, because I have learned that this body is temporary. I'm here. All my relationships and everything are just for this lifetime. This lifetime is just one blip, like they say. One is like the foam on the ocean, and the little bubbles, right? Every second they go pop. So like that, this is just one lifetime. So like all those things, they help us to remain slightly detached and more detached. So Prabhupada says he can enjoy the happiness of spiritual life even in this body, because after leaving this body, he is certainly going to the spiritual sky. So this is the other thing, you see, because the devotee, having come to this perfection stage, where he now knows, because he knows the Shastra, he knows devotional service, he knows that as long as I stay on this boat, I'm going back home. So there is no anxiety. See, there is always anxiety in this life. First of all, anxiety about our current life. That's, of course, for sure. Everybody's anxious about, right now, everybody's anxious about COVID. People are anxious about their family. People are anxious about children growing up, getting good education, getting good jobs, married, getting married properly. So all those anxieties, of course, will live with us in this life. But then final anxiety always is, especially as we get older, final anxiety is that what's happening to me? Where am I going to go? And people, first of all, people don't even think about, they don't know this about they just think that, if I die, everything is finished, or they think if I die, I'm not sure where I'm going. So that anxiety of not being sure what's going to happen to me, that causes you a lot of stress at the end of your life. So if the devotee, in this case, he's already reached the transcendental stage, he knows where he's going. Devotees are not afraid of death. Devotees are at all not. Devotees know that that is part and parcel of life. Anybody who's born has to die. And when I die, because I have spent time to do something about my soul, I know that I have a good destination. I may not go back to the spiritual world because maybe that will take a few more lifetimes, but at least I know that I will get a good birth where I can continue my journey. There's a shloka in, where is it? Where he talks about Prapya Punyapatam Lokan. This, I think, sixth chapter. Prapya 641. Yes, 641. Prapya Punyapatam Lokan Ushitva Sashvati Sama Suchitam Srimatam Gehe Yoga Prashta Bijayate. So in that shloka it says, a practitioner who has not perfected his bhakti in this life, in his next life, he gets birth in a family of righteous people, or in a family of rich aristocracy. So either way, he's going to get a good birth where he'll have a chance to continue his journey. So this is why he is relaxed. And so because he's certain where he's going to go, he's not so worried. So we can transcend the modes by knowing this, that all within the world is taking place under the modes. A couple of verses ago, we studied that it is the modes that are acting. The soul, because it is connected and it is so attached to the body, thinks that he is a doer, but it's not. It's the modes that are working, and the soul has nothing to do with it. So we understand that. We understand that Krishna's activities are transcendental to the modes. So Krishna's activities, meaning our activities connected to Krishna, are also transcendental to the modes. What we are all doing right now, sitting here discussing Krishna's pastimes, discussing Bhagavad Gita verses, we are all doing transcendental activity. This has nothing to do with the modes, right? Then Krishna explains that one can transcend the modes by engaging unfailingly in full devotional service. That will come in a few verses. I think that's verse 26, where Krishna says, Mam chayo vapicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatet yaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. So if with that, he says, if one without fail, without stopping, engages in my devotional service, he will surely transcend the modes of nature and come to the platform of Brahma. So this is how you transcend. And then once one will then come to the Brahman platform, of which Krishna says, I am the source. The last verse of this chapter will explain, Krishna says, I am the source of these Brahman effulgence. So we know that we can come to the platform of Brahma. But for impersonalists, just for our information, for impersonalists, this is where it stops. Their perfection is that, because they want to end up in the Brahma Jyoti. But devotees, for us, we got still some more work to do. We don't stop here. Our stop is not arrived yet. We want to still work on, because we are not interested in Brahma Jyoti. We are interested in the Lord himself. So we want to associate with the Lord. So our destination is the transcendental world where we can associate directly with the Lord, just as all his friend cowherd boys are doing right now. So that's how we go. And then in Prabhupada says, in other words, devotional service in Krishna consciousness is a sign of liberation from material entanglement. And this will be explained in the 18th chapter. So in the 18th chapter, which is of course a summary of the whole Gita, there's a section where he's explaining this. And there's a very famous Brahma Bhuta verse. Anybody here know this verse? Brahma Buddha verse? Brahma Buddha Prashan Atma na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. So this is the verse is referred here actually as a section, but this particular verse is highlight of that section. One who is thus transcendently situated. So you see, at the end of the 14th chapter, it will say that by doing all these things, by regularly doing devotional service unfadingly, we will come to the stage of Brahman. Now, in this verse is explained what happens when you get there. So one who is situated, one who is thus situated, one who is thus transcendently situated, at once realizes the Supreme Brahman, becomes fully joyful. So at this stage, when you reach there, you will realize the Supreme Brahman. Depending on your destination, whether you're looking for Brahma Jyoti, then you're completely happy being there. Or at that stage, you will realize that I'm now very close to Krishna, because Brahma Jyoti is Krishna's bodily effulgence. So if you're in Krishna's effulgence, you're sure to be reaching him very soon, and you become joyful. Then he never laments or desires to have anything, because at this stage, then you're completely liberated. The modes are not working. Our lamentation and desires are because the modes are acting on us, isn't it? If the modes stop acting on us, then these things disappear automatically. He's equally disposed to every living entity. Yes, by that time, then you're completely equipoised. You're not at all biased to anything. In that state, Krishna says, he attains pure devotional service to me. So you see, as I was saying earlier, we're practicing devotional service, but pure devotional service starts at that point when we have reached the Brahma Buddha stage. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam which came to mind, which talks about disentanglement from the material world. Tatropaya sahasranam ayam bhagavato odita yad ishvare bhagavati yathaya anjasharati. Of the different processes recommended for disentanglement from material life, the one personally explained and accepted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be considered all perfect. That process is the performance of duties by which love for the Supreme Lord it develops. So see, at the end of the day, this is it. We need to get our perfection in the love of Supreme Lord, and then the detachment from material world happens, and then we are situated in the Brahma Buddha platform. So the purport of that particular verse, it's a nice explanation Prabhupada gives. Let's see if somebody can read this. Gata Mataji, maybe you can read this.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
In the material concept of life, when one works for sense gratification, there is misery. But in the absolute world, when one is engaged in pure devotional service, there is no misery. Devotee in Krishna consciousness has nothing for which to lament or desire. Since God is full, a living entity who is engaged in God's service in Krishna consciousness becomes also full in himself. He is just like a river cleansed of all dirty water, because a pure devotee has no thought other than Krishna. He is naturally always joyful. He does not lament for any material loss or aspire for gain, because he is full in the service of the Lord. He has no desire for material enjoyment, because he knows that every living entity is a fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and therefore eternally a servant. He does not see in the material world someone as higher and someone as lower. Higher and lower positions are ephemeral, and the devotee has nothing to do with ephemeral appearances or disappearances. For him, stone and gold are of equal value. This is the Brahma Bhuta stage, and this stage is attained very easily by the pure devotee.
Thank you, Gata Mataji. Thank you so much. So you can see, it's so nicely explained by Prabhupada how when we get there, nothing really matters to us. This word ephemeral. ephemeral means material, basically. Prabhupada uses these amazing words, which sometimes we need dictionaries for. Ephemeral is material, and opposite to that is spiritual. So this all the higher, lower positions, good, bad, ugly, all that is ephemeral. If it's all material, but in the spiritual sense, everything is absolute. So there is no difference. Devotee then sees everything as one. Everything is equal. He sees the stone as gold, equal value. Then Prabhupada says, when one is freed from the influence of the modes of nature, he enters into devotional service. I believe that's the last sentence. So that reminded me also about this sequence of how liberation happens and how devotional service is perfected. Third canto, 25th chapter, verse 25. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana katha tajoshanada swapavagavarmani shraddha rattir bhaktir anukamishyati. This word apavarga, it comes here again. Remember we did this on Tuesday. We were looking at pavarga, which is pa, pa, ba, ba, va, ma. So these are the different things we spoke about, how the people are attached because of those things, and how hard work, pena, like that. Apavarga means liberation. So here in this verse says, in association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. Here in the verse it says, Hrit Karana Rasayana Katha. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. So you see, when one is freed from the influence of the modes of material nature, then this stage happens of real devotion, and this is where we experience absolute peace. And then actually a couple of verses before that, he talks about how one does not, in this case he's talking about sadhus. Sadhus are people who are perfect in their devotional service. So how they are not disturbed by material miseries is explained in this verse. Madashraya katha mrishta shrunvanti kathayanti cha tapanti vividastapa naitan matgata chetasa. Engaged constantly in chanting and hearing about me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sadhus do not suffer from material miseries because they are always filled with the thoughts of my pastimes and activities. Naitan matgata chetasa. Their consciousness is always in Krishna. So you can see that they do not suffer. So the point here is sometimes we will see that devotees are ill, devotees are suffering, devotees, we just have had recent bad experiences with senior devotees passing away with COVID. So it's not as if that diseases and distresses will not come, right? Because this world is full of miseries, as we read in the 8th chapter, Dukhalayam asashvatam. So this world is full of miseries. So miseries, the devotees do not escape miseries. So they say that miseries are inevitable, but suffering is optional. Why is it optional? Because if we start becoming detached from our attachments to our body as well and everything else, then the suffering will get lower and lower, right? So the perfect sadhus are in a stage of complete detachment. That's why, although materially speaking, you will see them suffering. You can see Prabhupada, for example, if you look at his videos towards the end, it seemed like he was suffering a lot. Yes, so from a material point of view, the body seems to be suffering. But then internally, that devotee is so detached from what's going on in the material body, that he's completely, not feeling it. We can even say, yes, maybe even feeling it because he will be asking for tablets for pain or whatever, but he is not attached to that pain. That's the difference. There's a subtle difference about us having pain and being attached to the pain. Well, the devotee is not attached to the pain. Yes, he will do whatever is necessary to alleviate it, but he is transcendental. He is not thinking about it. And one example that Bhakti Charu Maharaj always gives is that if any of us have had an experience going through surgery, for example, right? So what happens in surgery is that they will give you anesthesia, of course, anesthetics, and they will then operate on you. So whilst you are in that stage, you are not feeling anything. They are cutting your body open, there's blood oozing out, until the time they finish, they tissue up and everything, you don't feel a thing, right? But why is the case? That case is because our consciousness, our senses have been stopped artificially by anesthetics. The senses are not remitting the what they are feeling to the mind. So the mind is detached from the senses at that stage, right? So that is an artificial method, and you can see it works. So similarly, as it says in this verse here, if our thoughts are filled 100% with the pastimes and activities of the Lord, it's like when the glass is full of milk, you can't put any more milk in it. So then there's no space for you to then think about any other suffering. So that is the analogy that Bhakti Charu Swami uses, and this is how one can relate to being detached. So it's 8:36. Let me see if there was anything else. Yeah, there was a couple of purports I was going to read, but I think we will stop here. Time is running away. So I will open to any questions, comments, realizations, please. Everybody all okay? Very straightforward verse, I think. Is there anything that any of you thought was particularly interesting or particularly disturbing?
Prabhuji, can I add something?
Yes, please, Shobana Mataji.
I found out recently, especially this year, that since I'm doing a lot of chanting, reading, hearing, whereas before, if I used to engage with friends and family, and whatever they told me, it would churn in my mind later on or at night. And I found out now that, it's naturally like stopped unnecessary time wasting. And when I spend as much time on this hearing and chanting, I seem to think more about what I've heard in the class or what I have read, rather than think about what my friends said and what we discussed, which is really unnecessary talk. And I feel, that time was wasted. Whereas now, reading the scriptures and listening to chat group and hearing and chanting, it's just really changed me. So now I don't feel like chatting to friends for hours with useless talk. I'm thinking, it's waste of time. And this verse really, I think is so important, that the more we chant and listen and hear, and I think chat group is doing so much good to us all. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shobana Mataji. Thank you for sharing that. That's exactly right. This is exactly the experiences that we will feel. As we were saying earlier, that if we fill your thoughts with Krishna and devotional service, you will feel less and less of the other miseries. You can see this is a very nice example, Shobna Mataji, that you have experiencing it yourself, that how the mundane stuff becomes so unimportant when you have Krishna in our mind. Everything else it pales in significance. So that's very nice realization. Thank you for sharing that.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna,
like
Puja Mataji.
Yes, I like this concept that miseries are inevitable in this life, but suffering is optional. I think that's so true that we all are, I was initially reading it, I didn't realize. I thought, what are you talking about? But you explained it so nicely that that's what it is. Suffering is different degrees of suffering. Some people, even little pinprick, they will just shout. And another one like Srila Prabhupada was at the end suffering, never uttered anything and dictating Srimad Bhagavatam at that stage. This is an eye-opener, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Right. No, thank you so much, Puja Mataji. Exactly right. So the thing is, this kind of suffering, it can relate to everyday life as well. How, when somebody says something, like Shobna Mataji was saying, how it used to take over our life. Sometimes you wouldn't even sleep at night thinking about that, thinking about how will I take revenge? Why did she or why did he say that? You know, what did she mean? Why did she say that to me? You know, anybody else? You know, all those things that drive you crazy, right? But then, like I say, option is with us, right? We can say, stop, I don't need to worry about it. It is completely insignificant as far as my life is concerned, right? So that option is us to whether dwell on something that is hurting us, or drop it, let it go, right? They say that when you have something like this that's bothering you, it is like holding a burning coal. What happens when you hold a burning coal? It's just going to hurt you. The other person doesn't feel any pain about that coal that you're holding. So this is the thing. This is of course mundane, not spiritual, but yes, we need to have these things in our mind. That why do I want to hurt myself and divert my mind from Krishna because of some silly person saying something which doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Thank you, Puja Mataji. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Anybody else? Divi Gaurangi Mataji, are you there? You can add something.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Very nice, very, very nice class. Thank you so much. We are learning so much from this. And yeah, it's a very hope-giving, this verse. And from what I wanted to say is that, yes, everything that you have said makes sense. And we can't change the world. We can't change the outer circumstances, but we can definitely change ourselves. Yes, because it's about internalizing everything, isn't it? What we are learning
exactly
every day. And so once we internalize, it's all about the consciousness. If we change our consciousness, then that's what's going to help us grow and advance in life and get closer to Krishna. That's all I wanted to add. But thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. You're always so nice. You're always encouraging. Thank you, Divi Gaurangi Mataji. So yeah, that's where we are. Very, very nice verses coming along. So we will now have some interesting situations where Krishna will talk more about this transcending the modes. So we will enjoy the next few days. If there's, let me see if there's any questions. No, there's no questions here. Thank you for your nice comments, everybody on the chat. But yeah, if there's nothing else, just once again, as I usually say, please take care. This situation is getting really, really dicey now, much worse than we ever had before. Hopefully people will take this lockdown seriously, and we see the numbers going down. But in the meantime, it's very, very infectious right now, and we should try and keep our heads down. Don't go out unless you have to. Really, just keep your heads down. So thank you, devotees. Let's pray that everybody remains safe. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for wonderful, Prabhuji. Wonderful. Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Kanta Mataji.
Thank you for the lovely class. It's wonderful.
Thank you so
Amazing.
much. Thank you, Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
yes, it was very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
So much to learn. Mode of
Thank you.
nature. You know, it's just wonderful, beautiful.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kanta Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hitesh Prabhu. Thank you for reading the purport. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll see you all on next Tuesday. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.